Hello, and thank you for watching this recording. My name is Florian Hörler, and this contribution has been supported by Simon Horton, Patrick Meyer, and Pascal Hegeli. I will present a numerical toolkit that we have developed to analyze snow stratigraphy profiles, like the one you're seeing on the slide. While our methods are specifically designed for applications in avalanche forecasting, I see our conceptual approach applicable to a much wider geoscientific audience that needs to work with complex time series or other spatial profiles. But frankly, the field of avalanche forecasting provides an optimal context for this presentation. That is, because our tools aim to provide a missing link for several applications relevant for researchers, but also avalanche practitioners. My main goal for this presentation is to introduce you to these analysis methods I just mentioned, and to demonstrate how we envision these tools to help address challenges in snowpack modeling and avalanche forecasting. But before I dive into these challenges, let me explain why the snowpack plays a crucial role in avalanche forecasting and how forecasters work with snowpack data. The snowpack builds up over the winter season through the interaction between the meteorological drivers and the local topography. The resulting snow stratigraphy contains many separate layers with different structural and mechanical properties like layer hardness and snow grain type. In this graphic, different grain types are visualized by different colors. Avalanche forecasters use that information to identify weak layers with poor crystal bonds. If a slab of cohesive snow exists above that weak layer, the fundamental ingredients for slab avalanche release are combined. Therefore, information about the snowpack is crucial for developing a complete understanding of the avalanche hazard conditions. The profile we see here represents a snow stratigraphy at a point location. But since the meteorological forcing and the topography vary within an area of interest, the snowpack is also highly spatially variable. And that means layer properties vary between different locations, and some layer sequences might even be missing entirely. To understand the conditions at various spatial scales, avalanche forecasters analyze the snowpack at targeted point locations, and they attribute variations in the snow stratigraphy to variations in elevation, aspect, and sometimes even terrain features. But then they need to synthesize the gathered information into a larger scale picture. In the map, you see a forecasting region in the northern Canadian Rockies with subregions that cover about 2,000 square kilometers of terrain. To document their mental model of the regional scale snowpack conditions within these subregions, forecasters aggregate findings and hypotheses into hand-drawn whiteboard profiles. The documented layers in these idealized snow profiles represent key features of the large-scale conditions that the forecasters expect to exist within their region. In total, there are about 15 of such large regions in all of Western Canada. Our research group models these large-scale patterns by forcing the model snowpack with a 2.5 kilometer resolution numerical weather prediction model. So essentially, for every model grid point, we could provide forecasters with a simulated snow profile. You see the challenge, right? Nobody will look at hundreds of snow profiles. And who is saying that the modeled information is correct after all? Avalanche forecasting ultimately leads to decision-making with potentially severe consequences at stake. If we modelers want avalanche practitioners to use our simulations, we need to provide some measure of accuracy or uncertainty, potentially a real-time continuous evaluation of model performance. So we reinterpreted these two issues as a need for computer-based methods that process and analyze snow profile data so that snowpack simulations can actually be evaluated against operational snowpack observations, and that the simulations can be summarized in relevant ways. Basically, numerical methods that emulate the human process of snow profile interpretation and synthesis. and that's where our algorithms come into play. The root objective of our tool set is to numerically compare pairs of snow profiles. We do that in 2 steps. First, we account for variability within the 2 profiles by matching corresponding layers. In a second step, we assess how similar the profiles are. These 2 steps will then allow us to draw from existing clustering and aggregation methods to synthesize the snow profile data. You want to know what our layer matching algorithm has in common with your everyday digital voice assistant? It's based on dynamic time warping, a well-established algorithm that was developed in the 70s for speech recognition. And we're actually not the first applying dynamic time warping to snow profiles. A research group around Pascal Hagenmüller first applied the method to one-dimensional profiles of snow ram resistance. Since we're dealing with multivariate profiles here, though, that contain multiple layer properties from categorical to numerical and ordinal data types, we extended the approach. So instead of warping time, like in time series of voice recordings, we warp snow depth, so that layers that originally are located at different depths or have different thicknesses can be aligned. The idea behind it is to assess the suitability of all potential layer combinations and take the optimal alignment. Now in this matrix, each pixel corresponds to a combination of layers between the 2 profiles and visualizes how good or bad of a match the 2 layers are. Remember, each layer contains multiple variables with different data types, such as snow grain type, layer hardness, and maybe even date information. Also, in operational data sources, some of these data points might be missing. So all the differences of the properties between the 2 layers get combined into a local alignment cost. And that means matching all corresponding layers between the 2 profiles is now reduced to the optimization problem of finding the path of least resistance through that matrix. And once we know that path that accumulates the least cost, we match the corresponding layers between the 2 profiles, and therefore we know their optimal alignment. The 2 profiles can now be meaningfully compared, which leads us to the second analysis step, assessing the similarity of the profiles. The profiles that have been aligned based on physical similarity of their individual layer properties can now be compared according to characteristics that are relevant for avalanche hazard assessments. And that means not all layers are equally important. Since important weak layers are often much thinner than bulk layers, they would be dramatically underrepresented by a standard average across all layers. Therefore, we added 2 weighting schemes to our similarity measure. One that accounts for important critical avalanche layers, and one that accounts for the relative depth of these critical layers. In this example, it is not crucial whether there are 2 or 3 weak layers in the lower part of the snowpack, but it sure is important that the 2 weak layers closer to the snow surface are missing in the right profile. With these 2 weighting schemes, we aim to make our similarity measure more tangible for avalanche forecasting applications. Okay, so these tools allow us to align multidimensional snow profiles and express their similarity in a single scalar value. That functionality actually opens the doors to existing data aggregation and clustering methods. By repeating pairwise similarity assessments, we can group the profiles according to similar snowpack structures. This configuration plot, for example, gathers similar profiles close to each other and dissimilar ones further away. The conditions could be summarized by the profile that is most similar to all other profiles. Or we can identify clusters of similar conditions and summarize each cluster with the most representative profile. With that, congratulations for enduring that data acrobatics exercise. And let's now move on to the question, what can we do with that? Here is how we envision to use these tools in order to help overcome the challenges around snowpack modeling for avalanche forecasting. The first challenge was related to summarizing snowpack information according to hazard conditions. Our methods enable modelers to aggregate point information of the complex snowpack structure into a regional scale perspective. What's even more powerful is that these summaries don't have to follow predefined regions, but the grouping can be done dynamically. Let's take that even further. Right now, we only see a grouping and aggregation according to spatial extent. But imagine these dynamical summaries also cross different cardinal aspects and elevation bands. Imagine the wealth of data that can be automatically synthesized. Methods like these will become even more useful and necessary when snowpack simulations on large domains capture more and more small-scale variability. Since our numerical snowpack summaries were originally inspired by human expert assessments of regional scale snowpack features, these human assessments can now be used as a foundation for a continuous evaluation of snowpack simulations. And by evaluating the simulations at a regional scale, we also solve the issue of mismatching scales between point observations and the model grid cells. Furthermore, this application-specific evaluation will also be most informative for providing avalanche forecasters with information about these large-scale patterns. So now imagine that in the course of this real-time evaluation, a critical weak layer formed under very nuanced weather conditions that our weather and snowpack model chain missed. Our methods can identify where that important critical layer is misrepresented, and the simulation can be corrected. While the assimilation of snow depth measurements or precipitation amounts can improve the simulations a lot, the assimilation of critical snowpack structure could be particularly beneficial for avalanche forecasting applications, and the presented tools make it possible. So to wrap this up, let me recap that we've implemented a snow profile alignment algorithm that matches corresponding layers between complex, multidimensional snow profiles that consist of mixed data types like categorical grain type, ordinal layer hardness, or date information. We extended this matching algorithm with a similarity measure that accounts for application-specific requirements and provides an avenue for applying established clustering and aggregating methods to snow profiles. With that functionality, modelers can dynamically summarize simulations according to similar snowpack conditions. They can evaluate the simulations against regional scale human assessments, and they can begin to implement assimilation methods for structural snowpack observations. Other presentations in this session show that these are all pertinent themes within the research community, particularly when it comes to simulations that span multiple scales, or when it comes to evaluating and correcting for uncertain weather inputs. But by developing these tools, we also hope to make snowpack simulations more accessible and relevant for practitioners and operational applications. If you're interested in more details to understand how you can apply a similar approach to your data format, please follow up with our recent paper in geoscientific model development. With that, thank you for your interest and attention, and also thanks to the supporters of our research. See you at the live session at AGU.